Barnell, Planning Commission to order. Let the record reflect that we have 4 of the 5 commissioners present, constitute quorum, and I'll turn the meeting over to Chairman Letterdale.
Thank you, sir. First order of business is declare we do have a quorum. We have 2 members absent, but that does leave us with a full quorum. Second order is to review the minutes from the previous meeting. Has everybody had a chance? Any additions, deletions, motions?
Move to be approved.
Octavia makes a motion. Eric seconds to approve the minutes. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The ayes have it unanimously. Tonight, we do have a number of issues to, I think it's 3 in the county and 1 in the city to review, and a couple of items that are concerned amendments to the code. But before we get to that, Mr. Ethan Calhoun from the Northwest Georgia Regional Commission will review the processes for tonight and the requirements for those who'd like to speak either for or against. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, the meeting tonight will follow our set agenda, which if you'd like to have a copy of it, we've got a stack outside the front door. Feel free to grab one of those if you'd like to look ahead. Every item on tonight's agenda will follow the same exact procedure, and the purpose of the meeting, of course, is to hold a public hearing, and that is to hear comments for and against each item on the agenda. So, first and foremost, the chairman will open up the item on the agenda for the rezoning, and staff will come forward. That'll be myself. I'll go to the podium, make a presentation to the Planning Commission, the Board of Commissioners, and answer questions. Next, the chairman will ask for the petitioner, that's the person who is requesting to rezone or annex their property, to come forward and answer any questions that may come up. Once that has been heard, the chairman will ask if anyone else is here tonight to speak in favor of that rezoning or that request other than the petitioner. Once all comments in favor of the rezoning have been heard, the chairman will ask if there's anyone here who'd like to speak in opposition or against that item. And it's very important that if you are here to speak in opposition, that you grab one of our forms out front. You'll see there's forms for the county and forms for the city, depending on where that rezoning is going to take place. That you grab one of those, look on the agenda, make sure you know which item it is that you're going to speak in opposition of, and please date it, sign your name, and print your name clearly, and that's for 2 reasons. One is for state law. We're required to have those disclosure forms. Second reason is that if you make a statement, we want to make sure that we get your name correctly in the record, so that that'll stand in the minutes for posterity. Once comments in opposition have been heard, the chairman will ask if the petitioner would like to come back and address any of the concerns and rebuttal. Once that has been done, if no new evidence is raised during the petitioner's rebuttal, the chairman will then close that public hearing, and no further public comment will be heard on that particular item for the rest of the meeting. Again, that same exact procedure will take place for every item on the agenda tonight, and then once all the public hearings have been held, the chairman will move into the regular meeting for the Planning Commission, and that is when the Planning Commission will deliberate on each of these items and make a recommendation that will be sent forward to the Board of Commissioners and the city councils for Dalton and Barnell. And so no final action will occur tonight. The whole purpose of tonight's meeting is to hold a public hearing for information and to hear feedback for and against. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ethan. First item on the agenda is here's the request from Garland Barnes to rezone from R2 residential. Okay. R2 residential to R5 rural residential tract of land, 1.52 acres, located at 400 Sam Love Road, parcel 12-150-07-000 in the county. Hayden?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request here, you can see is on the center of the zoning map there, and from general overview, the petitioner is just simply requesting to rezone from low-density single-family to rural residential. And when we take a look at the zoning map, you can see there are a number of properties zoned R5 in this area, particularly across Sam Love Road over to the east, multiple properties, including neighborhood commercial there. And to the north, we can see a larger C2 general commercial district. And then we see the R2 low-density single-family, that bright green color, which is common throughout this area. Currently, the subject properties made up of a single-family detached dwelling and about 1.5 acres approximately in size. What the net effect that this rezoning could have on the subject property is that it could increase the density of the subject property. And while the 1.5 acres, 1.5 acre size of the property is quite limited in size, there could be an increase in density, but again, that would be somewhat limited just simply due to the size of the subject property being only 1.5 acres. This would open up the potential to go from just only single-family residential to both potentially a manufactured home or potentially a duplex dwelling. Petitioner does not have any specific plans as to exactly what they intend to do with this property. So we don't have anything to go off of in terms of what their specific plan is in regard to future development of this property. But the potential for duplex, the potential for manufactured home is a potential change to the character of the subject property than what is currently allowed in R2. If we look again at development in this area, we saw the zoning map. We can see development is very similar to the zoning map. It overlays quite evenly, in fact. And when you look to the north, you see the commercial shopping center there with the large supermarket. And just across the street, we can see a small office building there. And we see some of those R5 properties over to the east as well. We have a close-up picture here, so you can see the subject property is what we call a point of convergence between commercial and residential. We also can see that the subject property has had on it a manufactured home. That, of course, would be non-conforming as it currently stands. In R5, if the property is divided, that could become a conforming lot. There's also potential, again, to create additional lots, and there is also access to public sewer on Old Lafayette Road. So those are just a couple of points to make about potential for future development. And in looking at the future development map, we're in the suburban neighborhood character area. We're also on the bounds of the Community Activity Center just to the north. And being on the periphery of these areas where you have a community activity center, as well as utilities such as water, sewer, and access, almost immediate access to a state highway being just to the east there, Highway 41. This gives grounds for consideration with the comprehensive plan based on the existing development in this area, including multiple manufactured homes in this area, including the non-conforming one on the subject property now. So this character is essentially, to say, to put it in short, already established in this area. We do not see R5, this rezoning, changing the character of this area overall from what has already been established. We don't see any conflict with the comprehensive plan based on this community activity center being adjacent and the also adjacent development. Happy to answer any questions. The staff recommendation is that the rezoning can be approved.
Questions here? Commissioners, questions? None? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Barnes?
Yes, sir.
You have anything you'd like to add?
No, he's pretty well covered the subject.
Okay.
The only thing I would add, I don't think the mobile home would be a problem for me. I don't think that's gonna happen. But the mobile home that's there probably won't be there very long, but, so that's not an issue with me.
Does anybody live in the house?
Someone living in the house now, yeah.
Okay. Well,
Why are you wanting it rezoned to R5 if you're not gonna be, did you say you wouldn't be using the mobile home?
And I said the mobile home will probably have to move. It's been there a long time, and it's probably a distraction for anything I might want to do as far as subdividing the lots and so forth. That's not part of the plan.
So you have no idea what you may wanna do with the land?
I've got some ideas, but it's, the options, as I understand, there's duplexes, there's single family, small houses. But the biggest opportunity I see, the fact that they have sewer there, city sewer, is that opens up the possibility of more lots, as I understand it.
Okay.
It makes my property more valuable. I hope.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir. Is anybody else who would like to speak in favor? Anybody who would like to speak in opposition? Very well, we will move up to the next item on the agenda. That is to hear the request from Nicholas Tucker to rezone from low-density, single-family residential R2 to general agriculture GA, attractive land totaling 20 acres along Bowers Road. This is in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Going in a different direction here, going from single-family, low-density R2 to general agriculture in this request. Taking a look at the subject property, and the request itself is to simply take the subject property, changing from low-density single-family residential to general agriculture to create opportunity for the petitioner to utilize the subject property for both agriculture and personal use. I believe somewhat of a homestead seems to be the plan here. The petitioner can answer more in detail as to what exactly their plans are for this property, but looking at the change, what could occur if this property is rezoned GA, of course, from the standpoint of the zoning map, we do see subject property being decent in size, marked on the map as compared to some other adjacent properties. And when we look around to see adjacent zoning, we see R2 is certainly on this view of the zoning map the largest, most dominant zone district. But if one were to zoom out on this zoning map, you would see that general agriculture district to the south and the east is quite large and consistent as well. So these two zone districts, the R2 and the GA, are coming together at this location, and the subject property lies right on that point of convergence. And we can see just to the south and to the east, that dark green color being the general agriculture zone district. And I say all that just to say that this zone district has been well established throughout this area. And if this rezoning were approved, it would simply change the color on the zoning map and allow for agricultural use on the subject property. Based on existing unified zoning ordinance regulations, right now, no recreational nor full-blown agricultural business, commercial-related agricultural activity could occur. No animal husbandry or anything like that, or even recreational keeping of livestock could occur in the R2 zone district. So this would enable those things to occur. Next, we'll take a look at the zoning or the development of the area, and as it compares to zoning, we see it's pretty similar. Low-density, single-family residential. And we see agriculture. Even on some of those larger lots that we saw that are listed as R2, you can see very much have an agricultural character to them. They are not subdivisions. Next, again, closer look here around the subject property, kind of on the boundary with some smaller lot development. And we look at the rural residential character area in the joint comprehensive plan, which we see here is throughout this whole area. And of course, the goal for rural residential character area is to preserve the rural and agricultural character of the area and limit overall density in the area to keep that density on a lower end. In terms of R2, R2 of course was not threatening that zone or that character area in this case. However, the general agriculture zone district is an even better fit for the comprehensive plan at this location for that character area. So staff find no concern with the request to go from R2 to GA and recommend approval. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Gentlemen? That's it. Thank you, Ethan.
Thank you.
Mr. Tucker?
I mean, as he was saying, that pretty much kind of covers it. We're just kind of, we're just hoping to move out there, like you said, kind of start a homestead, you know, lower our grocery bills, that sort of thing. And just kind of build a house for our family and kind of go ahead and have some land for future children and that sort of thing, that they can have an opportunity and that sort of thing.
Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
Gentlemen? All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Does anybody else would like to speak in favor? Yes, ma'am. Hey, could you state your name and address, please?
My name is Erica Hembry. My address is 1894 Rayburn Road. I'm a little ways away from that, not far. And that rezoning would actually help me and my family because I have chickens and things like that. And we do use the eggs from the chickens that we have for our family just as well.
Okay,
Because we have chickens and turkeys and things like that that we do use.
turkeys.
Yes.
Okay,
So we would like to know if the rezoning can go over to our road as well, I believe is how it's stated.
that could be an option.
Because that's what we was actually looking for.
They'll just have to apply.
Yeah, you just have to apply. Do you know what your zone now?
How big, sure, how much acreage do you have? I think it has to be a minimum of 5, maybe.
Okay, okay.
Do you know your acreage?
We're like at 2.5, 3. We're not big. It's not
Okay.
big. I'm not gonna lie. It's not a big place.
All right,
But it feeds our family, so
I understand. Okay,
thank you.
very good, thank you. Is there anybody who'd like to speak in opposition? Very well, that closes the public portion on that request. The next request is to hear the Whitfield County Board of Commissioners, Mayor and Council of the City of Dalton, and Mayor and Council of the City of Varnell to amend the Dalton-Whitfield-Varnell Unified Zoning Ordinance regarding compliance with the Georgia HB 1405. This would be all 3 jurisdictions. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Switching gears now, this would be a unified zoning ordinance text amendment specifically affecting our procedures and standards in the zoning ordinance. The reason this has come about, very simply, is that the legislature, the state legislature, in last year's legislative session, passed House Bill 1405, and it was ratified by the governor. And what House Bill 1405 did was it changed the way that we look at a couple of things, one of those being the difference between the administrative, the process of the appeals and variances, things to that nature, now being regarded as a legislative act, much like a rezoning decision. And so we had to make some changes to our ordinance, like pretty much everyone in the entire state had to do with their zoning ordinance. And the next thing was, and one of the most impactful, was that we had to change how we advertise, specifically the length of time and how we advertise, from what used to be the law kept us within, and we had to advertise a minimum of 15 days and a maximum of no more than 45 days in advance of a public hearing. And House Bill 1405 requires us now to advertise in a minimum of 30 days in advance and no more than 45 days in advance. And we do that out of caution in order to, we have been doing that, I should say, for the last year. We've been required to follow that law. And now, as of July 1 of this year, we'll be required to actually have all these amendments made to our actual ordinance. And so that's what is in front of you now. And these changes, again, affect the amount of time to advertise,
increasing our amount of advertising from what used to be 15 days as a minimum, 2 weeks and 1 day, to now 30 days in advance. It increased the amount of time for appeals to appeal a variance. And there were several other changes in regard to, again, variances and including variances in our same procedures and standards that we use for zoning, that we didn't used to have linked together. Zoning and appeals used to have separate procedures. Now those follow the exact same procedure. So again, all of the changes that have been proposed as part of this unified text amendment are all and only part of what has been required as part of House Bill 1405, and we are required to make these changes and for those changes to be adopted in our zoning ordinance as of July.
Now, based on what I heard, the state is mandating this.
That is correct, sir.
And, I mean, I just have a problem with the 11.3.9 going from 90 days to 180 days. But I guess if we don't have a choice, we have to live with. Is that the case?
That's correct. With bumping up the amount of time for advertising and the amount of time, basically changing the time frame there, we had to increase that as well to give a reasonable amount of time for that process. From the time the decision has to be made from start to finish, from the time the application was presented to the time a decision has been made. Because there's potential for something to be tabled once, so that begins to draw out the clock. So we had to make those changes in order, again, to make sure that we are in compliance with the law, but also not short-sighting ourselves in our own ordinance.
So the state mandated 180 days. Is that the case?
They did not mandate 180 days per se. What they mandated here was the change in the advertising, and based on,
I understand that, but time is money when it comes to development, so if that can be changed to 120, or would you have to stay with 180? I mean, the county probably can answer that.
That's too long.
I'm sorry?
6 months is too long.
I know.
It could be held up, make a decision.
That's what I'm asking. Can that be reduced to 120 and instead of 180? Or the state mandate the 180?
If we do it in 90.
It was 90, right?
it was 90 before, yes, sir. That's a great question for our legal counsel in terms of being able to change that in compliance.
Well, I think it'll have to be more than 90, and we'll figure out what the least number of days it is. It may be that, it's basically just adding up the number of days that it could be.
Well, I understand that. It could be 120 instead of 180. Yeah.
I mean, we can just, we can get back together and try to put a calculator to what is the minimum number of days it would have to be under the state mandate.
I mean, if 90 was sufficient before.
Like
Well,
what
that was because 15 days was,
Yeah, but 15 days to what? To 190, to
Right, but
190
when
days is a big difference.
it has more to do with when you have to get your advertisement out, and then you could, depending on how the month falls, when you might have your meeting. So there would be no way to comply with the new law and leave it at 90.
No, that's what my question is, can that be 120 instead of 180?
So, Tapio, I think what he's saying is you could take that baseline of 90, add the additional advertising day requirement along with how it falls in the calendar. It could be 120, it could be 115, it could be 110, depending upon.
I understand that
Yeah.
part. With 120 is reasonable enough. Unless the county objects to that. I don't-
Better for anybody.
This provision does apply only to variances with the Board of Zoning Appeals. And,
That is
Jake can say, I can't remember the last time that they didn't just
make a decision at the meeting itself. So this would be a very unusual circumstance. Almost every time we ever have a meeting, they make the decision right there at the meeting that day.
So Ethan, the question is, can it be reduced from 180
To 120.
to 120 or?
If it has to be up, if it has to be increased, 120 is plenty,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
You can also, basically by reducing the number just means that the Board of Zoning Appeals can't postpone something.
Mhm.
And so if you change the number down to a number, if you leave it at 90, then they can't postpone something.
No,
And that's fine too. But
well, if you want, if it's fine, choose between 90 or 120.
I can go with 120. All right. Okay. Sounds like you're looking to leave it at 90, right? At least the county. But the county, I'm just looking for your opinion. All right?
I think our consensus is 90 days.
Okay, Ethan, just move on from that question. Can we leave that open? Yeah, we take that up in the
Based on
regular
our,
meeting?
based on our timeframe, in order to get this adopted in time, what we recommend, from what staff recommend, would be to, with any changes that are seen necessary to be made, to put that in the form of the recommendation, and that way it could be sent forth to the two cities, Varnell and Dalton, and the Board of Commissioners, for them to have their first and second readings over the next month of June, so that we can make that deadline, which of course give another opportunity for this to be heard and be in the, up for discussion until that time.
We will,
I make a recommendation then, to
Okay.
leave it at 90 or to increase it to 120 max.
we will take that up in the regular meeting.
Yeah.
Right? Okay? Thank you. That's the only questions we had. Moving on to the next request. Oh,
Don't I get a chance to talk about it?
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Thank you.
it felt like a public comment then.
I know most people wouldn't even, and I apologize. Just having this Wednesday, no one has had a chance to look at it. Also, when was the Georgia House Bill, that's too loud, 1405 passed?
February, I think. On this session.
2022, end of the legislative session.
And it's just now getting here, and you're going to give people people need a chance to read this and compare it with the other code. And I would like to see you all bring this back up at your next meeting so that people have a chance to look at this and see what's happening, so they understand it. It's not fair that the public doesn't have a chance to study this before it's voted on.
We didn't have a choice, it's the state legislature.
I realize that, but if that passed in '22, we should have had plenty of time to have had this public and to see what is in it. And I don't think that's fair to the public not to have a chance to look at this.
You've had a year to look at it. That's all
John,
they
it's never
did.
been brought up to here, and we
Right,
weren't
right,
aware
right.
of it.
Mr. Chairman, there was a
Stay.
first reading of this ordinance before the Board of Commissioners last month.
Well, okay, that's fine, but
So that was
we
in
didn't know about
open meeting.
Was it in the paper? Was this listed in the newspaper?
Was it on your agenda for that meeting?
You need to,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it was on the agenda for that meeting, so it was open to the public.
All right, it
Could have
didn't
been.
come up till we saw this Wednesday at 5 o'clock, which is another issue. I asked for a certain staff analysis on the 12th and was told I couldn't have it on the 17th. My understanding is there's a 3-day turnaround time for requests. And being told I have to wait till the 17th when all this comes out, I don't feel like you're being very fair to the public. I also think the public should have known about this one and the other one that's coming up after the zonings. I think we need more time to look at this, and if this was passed at the end of '22, it's May.
Well,
We're-
like the commissioner said, it was in open meeting.
It may have been, but.
It's on the
most-
agenda.
How many people are here every week? Mr. Oliver doesn't cover anything in the paper. And I don't mean to be disrespectful, but we need a chance to look at this. And I would appreciate that very much to have that chance. And I thank you for your time, but this I won't speak again, but it's the same thing. We haven't had a chance to look at it. It has not been widely circulated. It hasn't been in the newspaper. This is the first I heard of it when I saw it Wednesday at 3 o'clock. So, anyway, so this is May. This has taken too long to work this out, and we deserve a chance to look at it and understand it, because we're not all lawyers. But thank you.
You'll have until our meeting to look at it, and then we'll have 2 readings on it.
If you've already had one, how many readings do you have?
This is not a reading.
No, but he just said there was a reading at your last meeting.
Did you say there was a reading?
He said no.
There was a first reading in May.
First,
How come?
Yeah, I
Previously.
do remember that, yes.
Oh, wow. So see, it's just not even us. They don't even remember. This needs to be publicized. We need a chance to read it.
any other comments? All right, that will close public portion. The commissioners will be, most commissioners.
Most commissioners.
John's going to stay with us?
I'll stay.
Okay. Next item is item D, to hear the request of DPG Single Tenant Georgia to rezone from General Agricultural GA to General Commercial C2, tract of land 1.73 acres located at 4036 Highway 2 in Varnell. This is a Varnell issue. Ethan, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This rezoning came before us here to rezone from general agriculture to general commercial. And of course, first looking at this property and looking at our GIS system right now, what you see before you on the zoning map and what you would see if you were to look up this property on our system online is 2 different things, and that is the fact that the part of the subject property being requested to be rezoned as the introduction to the item on the agenda notes is only 1.73 acres. And so a portion of this property would be divided in only that small portion that you see on the zoning map. The 1.73 acres would be up for rezoning in this case. We do have the legal description for this proposed tract of land, and therefore we're able to move forward with this procedure. So right now the request is to be made to rezone to general commercial. If we look at zoning and development in this area, what we see is the general agriculture GA and C2 zone districts are adjacent to one another at this convergence along Highway 2 and nearest to the Cleveland Highway 2 intersection. Next, we take a look at the jurisdiction of this property being within right on the boundary of the city of Varnell. Next, we can see existing land use in this area as it relates to zoning. And of course, we can see very much similar to our zoning map. So the property zoned commercial, you can see here, have essentially been developed for commercial use to varying densities from the shopping center nearby to some of the smaller retail and restaurants just across to the north of Highway 2. As a closer look here, you can see also next to the subject property just to the west is an electrical substation We see 2 electrical substations in this area to the north and the west. And again, some commercial development directly across the street to the north. In regard to impact to adjacent property, what could this rezoning do in terms of impact economically, as well as to the zoning map itself in terms of precedents being set? We look at the development of the adjacent property, which for the most part is either already developed for commercial or is quasi-commercial in the sense of an electrical substation, or as part of the parent tract of the subject property, which is to the south. And of course, if this rezoning were approved, the subject property would be required to have a buffer, I believe a 20-foot buffer, around 3 sides of the subject property, and that would be the entire eastern, southern, and western boundary of the subject property. And in terms of potential impact of the zoning map, we saw earlier this is adjacent to the commercial zone district. There is commercial adjacent across the street. There's also very nearby commercial to the east. If we look at the petitioner's plans, we can see here their site plan for development would be for retail space. We can see their associated parking, as well as their ingress egress, their access apron aligning with the driveway across the street to the north. So they're, of course, using best practice there in terms of their planning for this property for ingress egress. And again, they would be required to have a minimum of a 20-foot buffer around the entire, essentially the entire property boundary, with the exception to that across Highway 2, which again on the opposite side is already zoned commercial. There are no adjacent, immediately adjacent residentially developed properties. Therefore, impact is not expected to have a negative, or there isn't expected to be a negative impact on any of the adjacent properties based on the existing development and zoning in this area.
Is Highway 2 a state highway or county?
Yes, that's correct, state.
So the state has to.
So it's along a state highway, also, again, very near Cleveland Highway, another state arterial for Whitfield County. So we are seeing this request, the net effect of it will be to slightly enlarge an existing commercial area, essentially along the southern right-of-way of Highway 2. It isn't out of character with the established pattern throughout this area or the established zoning. And we saw no conflict with the comprehensive plan based on the fact that this particular property is within the Community Activity Center character area, which does recommend for things like multifamily, for commercial, and those type of uses. So we don't see any conflict based on the existing zoning in this area. So we find no issues with this rezoning from a staff standpoint and recommend approval. Be glad to answer any questions.
On this site plan, it looks like the driveway and the lower or northeast parking or pavement is right on the property line. Does that make, am I reading this poorly? Or is
We'll
it-
have to look into, when they get to their point of actual development, of course, this is just a preliminary site design. So in terms of them pulling permits, they'll of course have to comply with that buffer area, and the roadway will not be able to be in the buffer. So you're exactly correct in noting that, and that would have to be somewhat addressed on their site plan. But they do have room to do that, we believe.
Very good, thank you. Any questions? All right, thank you, Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative of Single Tenant, TPG.
I don't have any comments. I'm just a surveyor that did the survey, represent the property. I don't really have any comments unless anybody has any questions.
Is that good representation, Ethan? We're good? Okay, go ahead.
I've got revised copies of the survey if anybody'd like to see those.
They're not necessary. Okay, so you don't have any comments,
I don't. I'm in a neutral party.
but the revised survey is,
It pretty well closely reflects that. They've got a power line. I think it's 100 or 125, maybe 150-foot easement on the west side. Can be used for septic system only. No development can take place. They have been working with TVA for their parking. I do believe TVA has worked with them so that they can have some parking, limited number of parking in that easement to the left side or west side of the property.
But you said septic, it does have sewer, right?
Does not.
Does not?
Does not.
No.
No.
It's a bit of a stretch.
No, it's
Okay.
conventional septic system.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
That said, anybody else who'd like to speak in favor? Sir.
Not in favor, opposed.
Okay, hang on a second. Well, just hold right there. Anybody like to speak in favor? Okay. Speak in opposition?
I'm Chris Kaler. I'm to the west of the tract. If you pull up the old screen or the map, I can show you. I'm the 23 acres to the left of the power substation there. And if you go back to the original, we purchased this property 7 years ago because it was agricultural on both sides, okay? And we would like to keep it that way because we've expanded and created a farm right there in that area, and there's enough traffic and enough noise already in the commercial part of that development. I get to hear the Burger Den orders every night, and I really don't want to hear more orders and more traffic out there. The people that pull out in front of the Burger Den or the AutoZone, they like to rip out of there, you know, and I get to hear all those noises. And I'd like to keep my farm to be a farm, and that was the intent of buying this property 7 years ago. So I'm surprised that we're saying that now we're gonna just convert it to commercial when I've created a house and a home there for agricultural purposes.
Questions? Thanks, sir.
And what's the proceedings? Is there a vote by whom, or how does this work? This is
We
my
will-
first time here.
Close the public portion, and then we'll move into regular meeting where we'll deliberate on this, and we will take a vote, and that will be passed on to the city of Arnell for their final judgment.
But you're welcome to stay in attendance.
You're welcome to stay and listen.
It's, the public portion is closed, but the deliberation is still public.
You can listen.
You all will vote on that tonight then?
Yes, sir.
But that is our recommendation to the city of Arnell. They have the final say at their next meeting.
Yeah, my other understanding was the reason this was agriculture was just because of what we just talked about, septic and whether you can get a leach bed or it perks correctly, okay? So my understanding is, I know the property to my further west, they said there was no perk test. They could not develop that area. Again, another reason why we purchased that ground is to keep it agricultural. And again, I would just like to say I'd like to keep it that way. There's enough commercial tracks already over there, and some of them are not being utilized. So let's let that get developed before we add more to the problem.
They will have to prove it will perk before they can do
Yeah.
anything.
Okay, all right, thanks.
Excuse me?
Yeah, they've already had their perk test done and approved. Dr. Huddle in to me, WK Soil Scientist. They have
Okay.
had those approved.
All right, thank you. Is anybody else who'd like to speak in opposition?
Appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. I'm definitely
Can we have your name and address for the record, please?
it's John Alt, 1058 Cutta Beaverdale Road, Cutta, Georgia.
Thank you.
I'm currently opposed to this proposed zoning going from C2, even though it's 1.73 acres. My understanding is this could be perhaps a family dollar. And my concern is the rest of the GA where this 1.73 is coming from, at some point could also be zoned as Z2, thus reducing the GA zoning area. I realize to the north is C2, and that's been there for a while, other than the Wendy's, the O'Reilly, and the liquor store. But to the south and the east is GA. The staff analysis said that will not be to scale to create a significant trade generation. So my first question was there ever trip generation done on this to substantiate that, because I don't see it in the analysis at all. Ethan? Was there a trip generation done on that?
We didn't calculate a trip generation.
Was there a reason why?
Just limited size of the property.
Okay. So I disagree with that. So currently, GDOT analysis showed that right on Georgia 2 and Highway 71, Cleveland Highway, in 2021, it was estimated that 8,700 vehicles went through that area. In May of last year, it was 10,388 vehicles that went through that same area. That's an increase of 30%. Family Dollar website says the average customer visits their stores 32 times a year, which is about 2.6 visits a month. If you take the population of Varnell, which is 2179 a month, and you basically took half of that, which is 1,000, times that by 2.6, you just added 2,600 vehicles to that road. That road is 55 miles an hour. That traffic is already bad, and you're going to add more to that? I can't tell you how many times I've seen accidents coming out of those side streets getting onto that 55-mile-an-hour road. You're asking for a disaster to happen there. I'm sure you guys realize that that area is also a water supply watershed. And if you approve this, 2 more acres will be lost in the groundwater recharge area, which the long story is, that's going to be our future drinking water. And that can't be replaced once this is paved over. So just for a note, 27,000 gallons of water has the ability to go in the aquifer on 1 acre of land. So you're basically going to take, roughly give or take, 40,000 gallons of water will not get in our aquifers. You guys should not approve this, okay? Every time you zone something and you take it out, you can't replace it. And once it's done, like the gentleman said. He's got a farm out there. I live on a farm. When stuff comes in and they start taking away your livelihood, it seems it's okay. I'm telling you it's not. Okay? And I, for one, I'm sick and tired of it. And y'all need to look at all the different things that I look at and other people look at, because when I come here, I speak based on the facts that I get. Okay? And when I ask certain questions, well, it wasn't done. Well, why not? It was done on other ones.
Not Camden Farms.
We're not going to talk about Camden Farms. Okay,
Sorry,
so.
please.
I'm sorry? Okay. So once again, I'm opposed of this rezoning to going to C2. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Any other opposition? No comments from back? You're just the surveyor. All right, we're going to move on. That closes the public portion on that item. Next item is to hear from, gotta be able to read it. Jose Mercado to annex tract of land, .17 acres on 2012-32 Fraser Drive into the city of Dalton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request, of course, is not a rezoning. It is simply an annexation, and because of the unified zoning ordinance, this is a simple act of only looking into the annexation itself, being that the city of Dalton and Whitfield County have the same zoning ordinance. As we can see here, the zoning, again, would not change. We can see that the property is, however, zoned for R3 medium density, single family, just like all the adjacent tracts around it. And if we look at the current city limits and the current incorporated status around the subject property, you'll see that this property is part of an unincorporated county island entirely surrounded by the city's boundaries. And while these do exist, of course, in any circumstance, reducing the size of an island or eliminating these unincorporated islands altogether is favorable based on the fact that it complicates service delivery with city services and those types of things, as well as school districts. So this request would very simply put, reduce the size of this unincorporated county island. The request was made by 100% of the owners. Therefore, by state law, the owner or the petitioner is not required to be here tonight to represent this petition. They filed for this annexation at City Hall, paid their fee, and therefore they're not required to be here. The staff recommendation for this annexation, as the other 4 annexations that have been requested in this county island in recent years, is, of course, recommendation to approve, based on, again, the fact that it will help to eliminate, to shrink this county island. I'm happy to answer any questions.
This is just gonna be paced one piece at a time.
Most likely.
Okay,
I can tell you the story on that subdivision.
all right. Without any other questions? Then we don't need discussion on this either?
You would need a public hearing, yes.
Public hearing, yeah. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody like to speak in favor of this annexation? Anybody would like to speak in opposition? Very well, good. We shall move over to the next. Next issue is to hear a request from Whitfield Dalton Varnell Planning Commission to amend Article 3 Meetings and Bylaws, essentially to update to show the meeting location. Ethan?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a simple change to our bylaws. We wanted to do, along with the Unified Zoning Ordinance text amendments, but being that this is a Planning Commission bylaw, the Planning Commission, of course, votes on this. This does not require us to go before the Board of Commissioners, City Council, and so forth. This change is only being recommended in order for the bylaws of the Planning Commission, specifically this Article 3 meetings of the bylaws of the Dalton-Whitfield County Planning Commission, are to correct and to update the fact that we have moved around several times over the last several years. And we, while we advertise all our locations, we did want to make sure that our bylaws are up to date and show and reflect our current meetings area, which is, of course, the courthouse. And so this change will be changing from the previous meeting location now to the courthouse, where I believe we will be for a significant amount of time. So we did want to go ahead and make those changes to the bylaws now that we have settled into this location. And again, that is the only change to the bylaws that is being presented.
Excellent. No questions? Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Again, public comments in favor, objections? And we will close the public portion of that, and that closes the public portion for this evening. We will go into regular meeting. You're welcome to stay and listen in, but you will not be able to participate. Nobody leave? Okay. All right. First item is to hear the recommendation regarding the request of Danny Edwards to rezone from rural residential R5 to general commercial C2. This tract of land on 211 Florence Avenue in the county. This one is an item that was tabled from last month.
I believe it was the month prior, Mr. Chairman.
Prior month?
Yes,
Okay.
the petitioner, the reason for this being tabled was the original site plan didn't account for several things. One of those, most importantly, being the amount of buffer around the subject property. Of course, the petitioner's plans were to construct many warehouses on the subject property. And so during both the staff analysis as well as the public hearing, that issue was raised. The petitioner has since provided us an update to their site plan showing those required buffers, that they will be able to make those in order to, again, develop their property in a viable sense. Again, we saw the zoning map for this area. As a quick recap, it is adjacent to commercial, near a commercial district. The rezoning request would be for C2, which we see adjacent to the east of the subject property. We can see the development in this area as you get along South Dixie Highway. It's in that transitional area out from industrial and commercial, moving over to residential and intermittent industrial, as you see over to the west. There's also a church, as you notice, to the north of the subject property, so there is some quasi-commercial use, some public gathering area to the north, and multifamily also to the east. When we look at the comprehensive plan, again, you'll see those character areas with commercial traveling upwards of South Dixie Highway, the subject property lying near that commercial area, as well as being adjacent to existing commercial, multifamily, and public gathering space. So in terms of existing development, staff didn't raise any issues. And again, here we can see their updated preliminary site plan to account for their required buffer, a minimum of 20 feet, which they've accounted for around the periphery of their property.
Does that affect the number of units?
It will reduce the number of units from his original plan, and as he previously stated during the previous public hearing, that he would reduce the size of some of those units in order to account for the cash flow. So the petitioner is still pursuing their rezoning and development, even with the stipulation.
Okay. Very good. Any comments or further questions?
It was approved then, subject to
Subject to this.
this preparation, so
Right.
we don't need to approve it again.
We need to,
You would need to make a recommendation.
we do need to recommend it.
I'll recommend that we approve.
Second.
Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The adjusted plan is accepted. Okay, item B, which was really item A, during the public portion, Mr. Barnes. Changing from R2 to GA, that was out there along Bowers Road, 20 acre, no, I'm sorry.
No.
I'm reading down. Mr. Barnes, R2 to R5 on 400 Sam Love Road.
I'm very familiar with that. I go through there all the time, and Ethan's comment about the character not being affected, I think is a true statement. I would be in favor of approving as presented.
Comments?
I'll
That's your
second.
motion?
Yes.
Chris makes a motion, Eric seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The request is approved. Next item is to hear from Nicholas Tucker to rezone from R2 to GA. And this is 20 acres along Bowers Road in the county. Create a homestead.
I'll make a motion to accept the recommendations.
Eric?
Second.
Eric makes a motion, Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. Next is here the request of the County Board of Commissioners to amend for Georgia House 1405. These were multiple items that we're changing based on dates, or at least number of days, from 15 to 30. And this is also the one where we're talking whether going from 90 to 180.
Michael.
With respect to that issue, I failed to mention before that one of the requirements of the new law is that there have to be two public hearings on certain rezonings or certain requests that involve multifamily. So we could just pull out, that's going to be a rare instance. So we could probably just, we were trying to keep the dates the same, but we could probably just pull out and leave it at 90 now as it currently stands, and have the lengthier time for the potential multifamily rezonings that do require two hearings. And those are only ones that are initiated by the government. can't remember there being one in the last 20 years, so
Mhm.
I think we're not talking about one that's gonna happen very often.
You feel fairly comfortable with 90?
So, I think we can add, we can leave all others at the current number, and then just have the extended time for that new class that was created by this law.
Okay.
If that would be something that would make everybody feel more comfortable.
Seems reasonable to me.
Yeah, seems reasonable. Ethan, can you get that written up? Okay. So all in favor? Oh, wait a minute, sorry. Chris?
Move we accept his recommendation and
Yeah.
make that my motion.
Second.
Octavio seconds, all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it.
Who was the second?
Octavio?
Second.
And item D, to hear the request from DPG Single Talent. This is the item land on Highway 2, crossing Burger Den. Some of the issues were traffic, and there was not a traffic done, because I have a Dollar General about 100 yards from my house, and traffic is not an issue. Didn't really want it there, but still, I could never voted against it. But
You know, that area, I'm familiar with that area as well. And, you know, historically, that south side of Highway 2 has had a very agricultural character for many years. Burger Den's been there for a long time. You know, the food line has been there for some time now. And, you know, you've seen the bank on the corner, the hardware store, all of those things have happened over the last 15 years or so. But that area, you know, west of, you know, the hardware store and south of the highway is still it has remained very consistently agricultural. You know, I don't know about the traffic study numbers that the gentleman mentioned, you know, but I'm kind of torn a little bit here. I mean, it is a point of conversion, but, you know,
thing is, going to the west, can't go any further because of the power stations.
that is true.
It is the last, unless somebody used that for agriculture. Ethan, was that piece of property owned further south? Do you think it's owned by the same person?
Currently, I believe it is, yes.
I don't see that.
Could you
Migrating.
put that screen back up for us, please, to look at? Maybe the satellite. There you go. Are y'all familiar with this area, pretty much?
Passing.
Yeah.
So, you know, directly across from the site, I believe that's an AutoZone.
Where's the Burger Den?
The Burger Den is just to the left. No, the Burger Den's to the right of the AutoZone.
Okay, gotcha.
And then I'm not sure what that is to the left of the electrical substation. It used to be a meatpacking provision.
Yeah, that's they sell arms, rifles and
Okay,
pistols.
okay, I knew it had changed. Can you make that zoom out at all? Is it possible? Do you know if the owner of the larger tract, is it the same owner of the smaller tract?
It's my understanding, yes, sir.
So he'd still have access to Highway 2 for the larger tract for agricultural purposes.
Yeah, well, I guess the owner that is petitioning for this site to be rezoned, I guess my point would be if he owns all of that to the south of him, and I'm just hypothetically asking the question, what if he wanted to develop, another site and then come through and another site, and eventually that whole track there be just dominoed to commercial over time? And that's hypothetical. There's no way to know that.
That's where we'd have to
Yep.
draw a line in the sand.
Mr. Chairman, we're just made aware that the petitioner is only proposing to buy that portion of the property. The portion of the property being requested to be rezoned.
Okay, so the owner today is a different person than the petitioner for the larger parent tract.
Correct. All the agricultural south will remain in the current property owner's name.
Okay,
To my knowledge, there's no interest
okay,
from the developer there to purchase anything outside of this.
okay. You understand what I was saying,
Yeah.
if they
Oh,
owned
yeah,
it all,
migrate,
yeah.
just domino effect. All right, so further comments? Octavio?
Eric, what do y'all think? What do you think?
Well, it is commercial development over there across the street already. I can see the concern of the people who had the agriculture. Because it is true, I mean, little by little, more commercial is coming. And that's unfortunately, the city or the county is growing, and eventually it's gonna be more and more. And it's gonna affect everybody around. But I think the recommendation of the staff, the only thing that I see over there that it was fault is the traffic count. And based on what you're saying, you haven't seen any increase of traffic on the, whatever, on close to your property. You say that it is, what is it, general store or,
Yeah, it's a general dollar.
There's a food, I'm sorry, a Family Dollar presently in the shopping center, is that correct, next to the food line? So they would be relocating and creating a vacancy in another commercial building, which I'm sure they'd be able to
This
lease
is
that
general
out.
dollar?
no, this is
Family-
different dollar.
General dollar?
Oh, is it not a Family Dollar?
No, it's not, it's a green dollar, I think.
Okay, this is general dollar, or Dollar General. Dollar General.
Their Family Dollar's in the food lane, and
Yeah.
it looks like this is also supposed to be a Family Dollar or a Dollar Tree.
I thought it was Dollar General, which is, I think, a different group.
It's a Family Dollar combo, Family Dollar, Dollar Tree.
Dollar Tree.
Okay.
It's the Family Dollar, the dollar items, the cheaper items.
Oh,
There's $3 general stores on the island.
Seriously.
makes them wonder why they do it.
It's because they're profitable.
They're profitable, and that's why they do it.
A lot of people shop in them.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, any motions? For or against?
I don't particularly like it, but I don't see how, as far as a recommendation, because I don't like it. I make a recommendation that it's approved and let the city of Barnell make the final decision.
Eric makes a recommendation to approve.
A second.
Second, for Octavio. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Still subject to Varnell.
Yeah, still subject to Varnell. Yeah. Vote in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain, against.
Against. That's 2 to 1. Okay. All right, the next one is, back in,
The city,
I guess the next one is Jose Mercado. Fraser Drive, that's the annexation into the city. Any comments at all? Motions? Eric makes a motion, Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye. Eric, Chris? All in favor, say aye. Aye. The ayes have it.
We're upset at that subdivision. When they present that subdivision to the city, they turn it down. Matter of fact, created a big problem because a lot of people vote for they're thinking that they will be the city.
Schools and all.
They turn it down. The reason we turn it down is crazy. A lot of it.
It'll eventually all be annexed.
It will.
Well, I'm
At some
gonna
point.
get with city council, ask them if they wanna present it to all instead of doing it piecemeal, because it's costing these people $200 a pop just to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
So I'll do that. Okay, number F, you caught up, Ethan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, F, to hear with the change of the articles, the meeting place.
That's,
That's here. It's
Yeah, it's
easy.
like taking me 5 minutes to get here now, so.
Slam dunk.
second.
Eric first, Chris seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. All we got now is Bab family easement. Jake.
So I have two plats for you tonight. This is the first one. This is off of King Road, which is off of Chattanooga Road 41 North. If you're familiar with where Tibbs Road ties into 41, this is just past that. This is a lady who has 3 acres of property who is wishing to divide it up into 3 close to equal lots for her children. But in doing so, she's creating a flag lot, and of course, flag lots do have to be approved by the planning commission. Environmental Health, Dalton Utilities, as well as Fire have all reviewed it. None of them see any reason not to allow this, but again, she is wanting to create the family easement for her children, and it creates a flag lot in doing so, so the planning commission does have to approve it.
I move to the approve.
Second.
Octavio and Chris, first and second, all in favor?
That looks suitable as far as I was concerned.
There's one more.
Anderson.
There's another one.
Pretty big. So these are tracts of property off of Tibbs Bridge Road. The owner is actually just reestablishing some of the lot lines that are to the north side of the property. You'll see tract C, that small triangle that is being combined with tract A. It's just that small sliver again. They're realigning the property lines to make them more clean. And in doing so, they exceed the 4-to-1 ratio, meaning that they have lots that are deeper than 4 times the width. They're about 100 feet wide, but they're going out to, I think, one runs up to 600 feet long, and the other is 5 and some change. 546 on one and 556 on the other. So, again, they exceed the 4-to-1 ratio, so the planning commission does have to approve the new plat and survey.
This is just a preliminary, or this already been built?
They're already built. This is existing property. They're just realigning some of the property lines. Those that are ghosted out are the ones that are being abandoned, and the ones in bold are the ones that are being created. And tract C, the 0.18 acres is being combined with tract A.
Okay,
just
so
to
change, the frontage is not changing, and
frontage-
essentially the depth is really not changing,
Nothing's changing just because
just adding that sliver.
They're just cleaning it up a little.
they're cleaning that slither up, and in doing so, it does create a new plat, and so you have to approve.
Everybody else okay with it?
Motion?
Everyone's okay
Chris,
with it, no one had any opposition because
Move
it is
approved.
existing.
Chris, Octavio seconds, all in favor? All opposed, the ayes have it. Okay,
That it?
Motion to adjourn? Anybody?
Move adjourn.
All right, good.
I'll get
Chris.
appliances. Oh, I just, I try to, I'm torn on it.